you can start talking whenever you want to start, and I'll stop screen sharing and it'll go right to you.
Okay, yeah.
When you hit broadcast, you should see people and the attendees start filling in. So
broadcast, where's broadcast? Hold on, is there something I'm supposed to be doing here?
1 second. Nope, it's good.
Okay.
We are live.
All right, we are live. Well, it's going to be recorded, so no time like the present. Let's. Oh, okay. You can pop that off, I think, Kaylee. I'm going to do a share. Okay. Welcome to the Liberal Arts and Earthapalooza 2021, sponsored by the Liberal Arts and Sciences Department, piloted by the great Kaylee Noonan. And before we start up, I thought we could look at a little bit of history on Earth Day. Earthapalooza is Berklee's annual Earth Day celebration. And we've been going for 7 years. The original Earth Day goes back to 1970. So it's 51 years ago. It wasn't called Earth Day, but a big teach-in, I guess it was, a massive teach-in on the environment, actually sponsored by U.S. Senator Gaylord Nelson, sort of said, yeah, we should totally do this. And here are some posters from the time. And it's worth noting that music has been part of Earth Day from the beginning. There were celebrations, festivals all over the country. Here's one of the Native American rock bands back in 1970. Pretty good, very jazzy. So, and with that in mind, we're going to start off our celebration with some music. We'll start with the great Sierra Cornell, followed by Sofia Elan. And speaking of which, Sofia, her first song is in Spanish, and momentarily I'm going to post a translation of that song in the chat for non-Spanish speakers. Okay, take it away, Sierra.
Hi, thank you, Kevin. Hi, everybody, I'm Sierra, and this first song that I am going to play is called From the Ashes, and I wrote it a few months ago about everything that happened in 2020, and how we're moving forward in 2021. I know the year brought a lot of hardships for a number of people in so many different ways, and I literally and metaphorically felt like things were burning down around us. And this song is called From the Ashes, trying to get at that idea of rising from the hardships that we've experienced and rising into a better world that we can create for ourselves and for others and our children. So this song is From the Ashes.
Lies like poison water, lighting match to fodder, locked in loveless battle, we have long been shattered, oh mother, hurting. other killing. We are burning, burning, but all in time we will rise from the ashes to the sky. We will rise from the ashes. Don't take a back seat, just give it love and give it heart and give it passion, and we will rise. Rise from the ashes. Hear Phoenix lullabies. Hear the newborn cries of the world rebuilding. See the world rebuilding all around us now, and we will rise from the ashes to the sky. We will rise from the ashes. Don't take a back seat, just give it love and give it heart and give it passion, and we are rising. Let it grow and give it water. Don't cut it down, don't give it up if it gets harder. We are rising, we are rising, we are rising from the ashes.
Thank you, everybody. So that was From the Ashes, again, a song about hope, about seeing, the light at the end of the tunnel. So the next song that I am going to play is called I Don't Want to Live on Mars. And this song was born out of, it's kind of an open letter to Elon Musk about the ethics of colonizing another planet, what we've done to this one, and the fact that some people want to just go out into space because we've destroyed our home. That idea is kind of astounding to me sometimes. So it's meant to be a funny song. It's not too deep, but this one, I don't know, it has a special place in my heart, I think, because it's something that a lot of people don't really talk about or think about, but I think it's really important that we continue to preserve this planet so we don't have to move to another one. So this one is called I Don't Want to Live on Mars.
I don't want to go and live on Mars. It seems a little sad and pretty far. Deserted red rock land filled with ash and piles of sand. There are better ways to live under these stars. Oh, I've been known to get a little car sick. Not sure that I could hack it in a spaceship. Oh, gravity, it brings me down. I love the way it's all around. Earth is better any way you parse it. So stop colonizing everything you see. You took this land and made it bleed, and now you want to flee. Stop colonizing everything you see. We might be in a rut, but I think Mars would surely kick you in the butt. Oh, I would miss the winters and the waters, the lions and the tigers and the otters, the start of spring, the evergreens, the bees that sting and all that sings. What would life be for our daughters? So stop colonizing everything you see. You took this land and made it bleed, and now you want to flee. Stop colonizing everything you see. We might be in a rut, but I think Mars would surely kick you in the butt. Oh, this can't be plan B. I don't know if you can tell, but things are getting hard as hell, and I want to leave a future that is brighter than spacesuits and a desire. So stop colonizing everything you see. You took this land and made it bleed, and now you want to flee. Stop colonizing everything you see. We might be in a rut, but I think Mars would surely kick you in the butt. I think Mars would surely kick you in the butt. I think Mars would surely kick you in the butt.
And that was I Don't Want to Live on Mars. Thank you, everybody. Earthapalooza is a wonderful, wonderful Earth Day celebration, and I'm so excited to be a part of it. Thank you, Kevin. And I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. If you liked either of those songs, you can check me out on SoundCloud under my name, Sierra Cornell. Thank you so much.
Hello, my name is Sofia Elan, and today I'm sharing my song Yubarda. It's a song, it's an apology letter to nature and the oceans and even to myself. It's a conversation, it's written as a conversation of my thoughts.
Okay, it seems like we had a little technical difficulties with Sofia. I'm gonna say that I saw this song, Yubarta of hers. It's absolutely fantastic. And there's, perhaps we'll let the music speak for itself. It is in Spanish, and I've just posted the translation in the chat. So Kaylee, can you roll the video, please?
Dicen que te alejes, pides que te dejen andar, buscas un escape, mas cómo te salvo y ayudo hoy. Me duele escuchar mi propia voz, saber que soy parte de tanta ambición. Perdona, fui yo quien olvidó tu fuerza sublime, la espuma ancestral. Canta, canta, Yubarta, de polo a trópico, de salto a la profundidad. Canta, canta, Yubarta. Dicen que no llores, buscan controlar tempestad, cargas cicatrices y yo vulnerable iré contigo a la par. Me abruma entender la realidad, me vuelvo pequeña sin saber quedar. Sumerge mi cuerpo en claridad, en fuerza de origen la espuma ancestral. Canta, canta, Yobarta, de polo a trópico, de salto a la profundidad. Canta, canta, Yobarta, lo bello y caótico, sin reducir tu libertad. Dicen que te alejes, pides que te dejen andar, llorar hasta ser una con el mar. No me queda nada, no me queda nada, no me queda nada de nada, tu nada. No me queda nada, no me queda nada, no me queda nada de nada, tu nada. No me queda nada, no me queda nada, no me queda nada de nada, tu nada. No me queda nada, no me queda nada, no me queda nada de nada.
Thank you. I don't know what happened with my internet. I got disconnected. It was terrible luck. That was Yugarta. And the next song that we're gonna play, it's called Bird Song. It's a song by Florence and the Machine. And it's a funny song. It's a story talking with a bird, and the bird heard your scene, and you kill the bird, but you still hear it in your conscious. And I love this song. I'm playing it with my friend Marcela Bastida, and she's a great piano player, and I love her, and I hope you enjoy it.
Well, I didn't tell anyone, but a bird flew by. Saw what I've done, he sat at the nest outside, and he sang about what I'd become. He sang so loud, sang so clear, I was afraid all the neighbors will hear. So I invited him in just to reason with him. I promised I wouldn't do it again. But he sang louder and louder inside the house, and I couldn't get him out, so I dropped him under a cardboard box, stood on it to make him stop. I picked up the bird, but then I bumped it in. I said, that's the last song you'll ever sing. Held him down, broke his neck, thought him a lesson he wouldn't forget. But in my dreams began to creep that old familiar tweet, tweet, tweet. I hope I'm out to scream and shout. I waved my arms and flapped about, but I couldn't scream and I couldn't shout. Couldn't scream and I couldn't shout. I hope I'm out to scream and shout. Waved my arms and flapped about, but I couldn't scream, I couldn't shout. The sound was coming from my mouth, 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 from my mouth.
Thank you so much. I don't know, we're having technical difficulties because I cannot put my camera on, but thank you so much for joining, and thank you so much for giving me time to listen to my music. And you can follow me anywhere. It's Sofia .elan.music on Instagram, and you can find my music on Spotify, same, Sofia Elan. And thank you so much, and thank you for inviting me to this great event.
All right. Thank you so much to Sierra and Sofia for getting this off to a wonderful start. Going to talk about what your task is, those of us who are watching. You have 3 things to do today: to enjoy yourself, and I think that one's an easy one after the start we had. To learn stuff, also hopefully pretty easy after we started, and also to keep it going. It's a marathon, not a sprint, and Earth Day is more than just one day. In fact, the official Earth Day is tomorrow, and I encourage you to Google Earth Day 2021 for other things. Now, speaking of learning and enjoying, coming up is my colleague. We have Linda Chase, who's giving a talk on Care of Our Common Home, a new oratorio for eco-justice. So Linda, the floor is yours.
All right, here we are. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, everyone, for coming. And big thanks to Sierra and Sofia. That was so beautiful. I appreciate you being here. I'm going to start today with a little bit more of a formal reading of a few paragraphs from an article that is becoming book, just to get people familiar with what is ecomusicology. And I do teach ecomusicology here at Berklee. And some of the things we do in class is we study landscape composers. Students respond with sonic journalism. We do deep listening. We talk about how is cultural sustainability related to environmental sustainability. And we're currently reading a book called Storming the Wall, Climate Change, Migration and Homeland Security by Todd Miller, and how climate change is increasing instability and conflict around the world. Ultimately, what are artists doing? How are artists responding? So what does listening to the earth have to do with being a musician? And how does it relate to the musical life and career choices of an artist? At this critical time on the planet, artists have great potential to communicate critical information, nurture compassion, and inspire action. In speaking out artistically about environmental issues, artists will be more effective if they know how to access accurate facts and possess a more than aesthetic understanding of the issues. In order for musicians to become leaders for environmental justice, music education can incorporate basic ecological understanding into the curriculum. Listening to sounds of the non-human world expands sensual, spiritual, and creative ways of knowing. Through sound consciousness, music education can provide fertile ground to plant seeds of awareness about critical environmental issues. There are many ways people relate sonically to the environment, and numerous scholarly and artistic disciplines engage with these interactions. Ecomusicology encompasses a diverse collection of interdisciplinary fields exploring sound relationships between the human and other than human world. Many people really consider ecomusicology to be a field of fields. in the Grove Dictionary of Music, only in 2014, so it's a very new field, ecomusicology is described as the study of music, culture, and nature in all the complexities of those terms. Ecomusicology considers musical and sonic issues, both textual and performative, related to ecology and the natural environment. So music ensembles are natural communities. In an ensemble, everyone plays a part to make up the whole. The piece doesn't consist only of the solo artist, violinist, vocalist, guitar, but requires everyone to come together and create the whole piece. The director focuses on creating a balance and blend between all voices. Listening is essential. A relevant model of community and practice of listening in the moment is improvised music, relying on spontaneous and collective listening. Listening to recorded and live music in the classroom is customary in music education, and we observe compositional techniques, harmony, historical context, performance particularities. But in addition, the conversation that results regarding the impact and the impression upon hearing can provide rich opportunity for discussion. Everyone participates in the presence of music and at the same time invites the person into the life of the music. The process of listening helps cultivate an environment that can be applied to listening to personal experiences and opinions shared through spoken dialogue. Collective listening to songs of social movements helps students engage in conversations regarding particular issues that are being expressed in the music. The songs open minds to issues and open hearts to personal stories about them. Sharing compelling music that comes with a story where people are sharing struggles unlocks compassion. When students share a song about a social movement or an issue that resonates with them personally, this process musically models how to speak out. One effective assignment we do in my classes has been to ask each student to bring in a song that speaks to an issue that's important to them. One value of this process is that the art itself can be the subject of attention. Sometimes we hesitate to speak our minds on controversial issues, personal struggles, or disagreements. But responding to a particular song can place the focus on the musical expression rather than the person grappling with the issue. Ideas can be explored through the image that the music relays, redirecting attention. This is especially powerful when students write songs about particular issues. The discussion focuses on the song and the lyrics rather than judgment about the opinion of the artist. The vulnerability expressed through these pieces opens hearts. So I'm going to share my screen now, hopefully, and tell you about this oratorio that I'm working on. Share computer sound. Let's get it up here. Okay, and enter full screen. All right. So I was honored to ask to be writing this oratorio by Reverend Dr. Harvey Cox. Harvey Cox is a theologian grounded in liberation theology. He's about 92 years old. He was friends with Pete Seeger and Martin Luther King. And he was familiar with my previous oratorio, which was The City is Burning, that I wrote in 2017. And so of course, when he asked me to do this, I felt very honored to respond. Pope Francis wrote an encyclical in 2015, and it's about it's a letter about 186 pages long. And what he wrote about that really struck me is when he says, and the quote is here, "Our goal is not to amass information or satisfy curiosity, but rather to become painfully aware, to dare to turn what is happening to the world into our own personal suffering, and thus discover what each one of us can do. So Laudato Si is the encyclical, and my response on Care of Our Common Home is a call to action through the medium of music. Our idea with the performance is that it will be about 75 minutes long for winds and strings, percussion, piano, choir, and soloists. And after the performance will be a discussion, dialogue discussion. And the idea is that the music doesn't just stay in its own place, but that it becomes a way for people to engage in dialogue in their communities. And so when we tour and take this piece to different cities and different places, people can say, well, what do we need to do here? And I think that's really important. For me, it brings in my life as an educator, my life as a musician, and my life as a eco-musicologist and working for social justice. It brings these things together. So why don't we listen to a little bit here to tell you a little more about the content, and I need to probably keep track of my time. The movement titles. Creator speaks in languages of trees. Let me tell you about that one. So the text that Pope Francis wrote was Saint Francis, not Pope Francis, invites us to see nature as a magnificent book in which God speaks to us, and then talks about how Francis had this beautiful garden. And so out of that text, I came to write this piece, which I call Languages of Trees. Read the pages, God is speaking, Creator speaks in languages of trees. And I'm gonna play a preliminary recording. Nothing has been recorded officially yet. We are looking for funding, we're looking for a choir, we're looking for musicians. But this choir was made up of a former Berklee student, Burcu Gulek, and Sam Jones, a former NEC student, and they remotely recorded this and became a choir with just the two. So I hope you can.
Read the pages, God is speaking. Creator speaks in languages of trees. Read the pages, God is speaking. Creator speaks in languages of trees. The book in which God speaks. Creator writes on paper.
nature is singing. Nature is singing. A book in which God speaks. Languages of trees.
Okay, I hope you're hearing that okay. I've worked with text before. I really love working with text. I've worked with Rumi poetry a lot. My first text that I think I started working with was with Kaji Asa, who was a Japanese poet in Boston. And some of you may know about the Kaji Asa studio in Back Bay, very near Berklee. Also, my relationship with music and nature was really expanded in 2013. I think I was artist in residence at the Grand Canyon and wrote about the uranium mining in the Grand Canyon, and a few years later wrote about the Fukushima explosion in 2011 in Japan. And that was also connected with Japanese tanka poetry. So the next recording I'm going to play for you is Prayer for Our Common Home. And this is sung by Nedelka Prescott. Many of you probably know her. She teaches in the ensemble department and she's a fabulous singer. And Anna Uchenpayan, who was also a former student and wonderful gospel pianist. Hope you enjoy.
All powerful God, you are present in the universe, in the smallest of your creatures. You embrace so tenderly. Oh God of the poor, help us rescue the forgotten, bringing healing to our lives, so we protect and not destroy. Pour out upon us the power of your love, that we protect life's beauty. Fill us with courage, that we may walk in harmony. Oh God, touch our hearts to seek awe and contemplation, to unite with every being as we journey through the light. Pour out upon us the power choose peace.
Right. I hope you're hearing it okay. I'm not hearing that anyone isn't. So the last little clip I'm going to share with you is from the very end of this encyclical Laudato Si. And what he writes is, we come together to take charge of this home that has been entrusted to us. In union with all creatures, we journey through this land. Let us sing as we go. May our struggles and our concern for this planet never take away the joy of our hope. And his words are very powerful there. And that led to this song, The Joy of Our Hope, which is sung in this recording by Sarah Brindell, also Berklee faculty and fabulous vocalist and pianist. And I think I'll end with this song. I just want to say that we are looking for collaborators. We're looking for supporters. We're looking for singers and musicians. We will be, we're hoping to record it during COVID. And of course, we're hoping to have a live performance once people can really come together again. There will also be some of the songs, 10 of the 18 movements will be in a form where communities can sing them. So guitar chords and melodies or SATB, and then the rest of them would be only probably done in performance. So I'm going to end with this last piece. Thank you again, Kevin, for giving us this time and this chance. Let us sing as we go, and thank you, Sarah.
May our struggles, may our concerns for our planet never take away the joy of our hope, never take away the joy of our hope. Let us sing as we go. Let us sing as we go. May we never lose the joy of our hope. Let us sing as we go. Journey together, we are entrusted. God the Creator offers strength and light we need to continue in the heart of the world.
Thank you.
Okay, fantastic, Linda. One thing I absolutely love about Earthapalooza is the incredible variety that we get, both musically and in terms of approaches and angles. To continue on with that musical variety, we now have one bit by Mason Turner. Let's hand over to Mason. The floor is yours.
Hey guys, how's everyone doing? My name is Mason Turner. I'm from Washington State, and I believe the first song that I'm going to play is it's entitled Green Giants, which I wrote about a logger from Washington in the 20s, and he's dealing with this idea of like, this is his job, this is what his family does, but he's also dealing with that this idea of like the trees in the Northwest being really important to him. And before we get into that song, I just wanted to share this really quick quote from a 17th century Dutch philosopher named Baruch de Spinoza, and he talks about God, and he says, stop going into those dark, cold temples that you built yourself and saying that they're my home. My house is in the mountains, in the woods, in the rivers. That's where I live, and that's where I express my love. And I thought that was really what, like, you know, this is about. It's not about like logging is bad. It's not, but it's not saying it's not bad, right? It's a little more complicated, right? And so that's what I got, and I hope you guys enjoy the song. My name is Henry, a skidder I am. I ride on a mule, pulling logs over land. My father was a faller and a mighty mean man. He lived and he died with an axe in his hand. From faller to skidder, from father to son, a logging man's life is all that I've known. And when I was born, I heard working outside on the Green Giants on a cold winter night. Green Giants, you're all that I have, and I wish that I wasn't destroying your land. Well, the alder's tall, she whispers her song. I hear it and I listen, but I cannot for long, 'cause So chop her on down, feed her to the mill. Do these green giants all have to be killed? I imagine a time before I was born, when those green giants all lived at home. Sometimes I wonder what lies ahead. Will all the green giants be all put to bed? Green giants, you're all that I have, and I wish that I wasn't destroying your land. I hope that my children are proud of me for working as hard as I did on those trees. And I hope that their children do not resent me for cutting on down the green giants I've seen.
Thank you guys. The next song that is going to be played is a song about moving on and balancing your life. So here we go.
All right. It's a cold one tonight here on the farm. I ain't holding you tight, you ain't in my arms. And baby, you might be the death of me, but Jane, I'm trying to set you free. And I know that you bring me grief and pain, but I love you, Jane, like a northwest rain. And sometimes I wish I could turn back time to when I was a better man and you were mine. And I know that you're out there with another man, but you're the kind of girl he won't ever understand. And maybe you think I ain't good enough to dance, just stuck on the stage playing with the band. Jane, you're all I ever need, but I'm begging, come on back to me. 'Cause I've been working hard on opening my heart so we can shine like a national guitar. Maybe when we're older, you might understand. The only thing I love is this guitar in my hand. Maybe when we're older, we'll fall in love again. And I might give up my singing just to hold you again. I might give up my singing just to love my best friend. And I might give up my singing just to love my best friend.
Thank you guys. Yeah, I just want to thank Kevin for inviting me here, and I would also like to thank Callie for organizing this and just making sure it all runs the way it's supposed to, because I've done that and it is not an easy job. And yeah, I think this is a really fantastic event and a really important event to have. And the performers have been really great. The talks have been really great. If you've enjoyed anything you heard, I have a website that's just Mason Marcus Turner, and then I have an Instagram page which is Mason Turner Music. Thank you guys, man. I really appreciate it.
Okay, thank you so much, Mason. Before I bring on our next guest, I just thought I'd share an anecdote here, which is back in the 1990s, somebody from an environmental group asked me to dinner, so a group I supported, and my wife and I went to dinner with them, and they said, so we have to ask, you're our only supporter under 30. How do we reach more? And I was like, are you serious? Oh man, these next couple decades are going to be a nightmare. But I am so happy to say that these days it seems like younger people are in the game, fighting when my generation failed. And I am beyond honored to have with me a member activist from a group which really has, I think, changed the game and changed the conversation and given Earth a good fighting chance. Lily Gardner is with the Sunrise Movement in Kentucky. Hello, Lily. Can you unmute yourself?
Sure. Hi, guys.
Yes. So I was going to say, we're going to have a conversation here for about 30 minutes, and she'll take audience questions. I would ask if you do a question that you use the Q&A button. That way they won't scroll away, and we'll be able to see those easily. So Lily, I think you could describe better this. Can you tell us a little bit about the Sunrise Movement for those who are not familiar?
Sure. Give me a second. Actually, though, Mason, your performance was beautiful and it reminded me of where I grew up. And I am a little bit, I'm still trying to get it together. So sorry, y'all. But props to you, Mason, because I was sitting here on Zoom, tears coming to my eyes. Anyway, so what is the Sunrise Movement? Sunrise is a youth movement that is working to stop climate change and create millions of good jobs in the process. And that's a little bit of a canned line, but what it just means in practice that we are young people joining together across the country to fight for the vision of a Green New Deal and organize in our communities to make it happen.
Great. And how did you personally get involved with the Sunrise Movement?
So I like any good Gen Z person, actually found out about Sunrise on Twitter, which yeah, so I saw a video of a sit-in in Nancy Pelosi's office in 2018, which feels like a whole lifetime away. But it was right after the primary elections, and Democrats were kind of celebrating this groundswell of what they felt was really strong turnout, especially in the midst of the Trump era. And I was feeling, I think I was feeling kind of lost, because of course I wanted to celebrate, and I was just feeling like, I think very hopeless, and that the degree of celebration that was happening did not actually meet the realities of the moment. And so I was scrolling on Twitter like the night after, and I saw this video of these young people sitting in Nancy Pelosi's office demanding a more progressive Democratic Party, and one that actually cared about the issues that real people were facing on the ground. And I think the thing that kind of cinched it for me was they started talking about this concept called a just transition, which, if you know anything about kind of fossil fuel divestment or the climate movement, you might have heard of. It's just the term for supporting communities that have been economically reliant on fossil fuels and extractive industries to transition to supportive, regenerative, and dignified economic systems. And that was a lot of jargon maybe thrown together, but I heard that word and I had never heard it used on a national stage. And so now I'm rambling, but I hopped on a call, and 2 weeks later, my mom let me go on a bus in the middle of high school to sit in again at Nancy Pelosi's office, and it has really spiraled from there.
Wow, that's fantastic. Before we circle back to you, I'd love if you could talk a little bit about your home, Kentucky. I know some of us think of Kentucky and our first words that come to our mind are, Mitch McConnell, and that's a deep red state. But I know, Kentucky is a more multi-hued place than that.
I would hope that at Berklee you thought of like bluegrass music or the country music highway, which is actually like right where I grew up on. So I grew up in Appalachia in Eastern Kentucky, in this tiny little town called Salyersville. And I lived there for the first 12 years of my life. And important caveat, my family were not miners. We were farmers, which is really ironic given my last name. But so I still grew up in the midst of this economy that was really dependent on, or once dependent on, coal. And the way I describe it is I really grew up in the wake of the coal industry, because by the time that I was a kid, there weren't very many active coal mines, but there was a lot of, I think, hope and belief that coal had to come back for people's livelihoods to return. And so I grew up in the midst of a real low point in our cyclical poverty, and also to like real crumbling infrastructure, and just like folks who were not feeling supported by their government or even by the rest of their country. So I think I try to describe my home in really positive terms, because it is a beautiful place of community and music and food and like love and care. And that's, I think, the reality of where I grew up in Eastern Kentucky. And of course, now I'm in Lexington, which is a little bit bland. So imagine any suburb, and add a little Southern spice. And that's where we are right now.
Okay, that's great. And I guess many people around your age feel powerless. I mean, of course, people under 18 can't vote, period. And kind of by definition, the 18 to 25 block is always going to be a fairly small minority of the entire electorate. And typically these are people, especially 18 to 22, who don't have very much money to throw around. So a lot of people could feel just powerless and kept along for the ride. One thing that's really impressed me about the Sunrise Movement is that I swear it has exercised more power than so many organizations that have far larger budgets. But speaking not about the Sunrise per se, but most of your audience here are people roughly your age or possibly a year or two older. how do young people find their power?
I think that's a great question. And I think to get to go into the jargon quickly and then to kind of zoom out, I think that Sunrise's theory of change, or basically the way that we believe that we are going to win, one of those pillars is what we call people power. And it's grounded in this idea of like the social view of power, that if we can get enough people organizing in the streets, having conversations in their communities and showing up to fight with us and make it really clear what they believe in and the vision that they have, then we are going to be able to win. And that was a very simplistic version. So for folks who are maybe more well-versed in sociology and rolling their eyes, I apologize. But that being said, I think young people are an integral part of that equation, whether or not they can vote, because I think people power extends so beyond just the electoral cycle, right? It means having conversations in our communities and actually organizing people, like having the asking the hard questions of like, is this a vision that you believe in? And if not, like really agitating people into getting there. And so I think this is all to say young people are transient and they hold a lot less economic power. And I think we still have so much ability to really build in our numbers and in our community and create like a mass movement to win. So that was a little all over the place. You'll have to excuse me.
Oh, no, it's fine. I'd like to zoom in on one thing you said there, which is have conversations in our communities. Typically, each of us is a member of multiple different communities, right? These people here have those they do music with, they have their family, perhaps, their old friends, and so on. My question is, first of all, which are the easiest communities to reach? And then how do you initiate those conversations? Because there's often a temptation to just stick with the easy stuff to avoid confrontation. And when Sunrise Movement correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like a fundamental part of their message is our current trajectory is capital, not capital good, and something needs to change. And that's not always the easiest topic.
Yeah, so I think there are a lot of parts to your question. So I will start by saying that I think often the easiest people to organize are the people who you're not interacting with on the daily. And the reason that I say that is because I think it's a lot easier to go into communities, right? If you guys were to go out into Boston, correct me if I'm wrong, and to knock on doors and to say, you know what, I'm supporting XYZ for mayor and let's talk about the vision that they hold, right? That's actually a far easier conversation in many ways than having to ask your friends and family to show up in this fight with you. So my personal assessment is that sometimes it's easier to talk to strangers, but often it's more important to talk to people who are close to us and to people who are of the many communities that we identify with. So I think on a college campus, obviously, you guys organizing each other is hugely important and like building power. Even though this is not your permanent home, there's still quite a bit to be said for the power of campus organizing in the context of like broader community organizing. And with that being said, I think it's also important to figure out actually like how does the work that we are doing connect to the community, the geographic communities that are around us and to maybe the identity communities that each of us are a part of. This all being said, I think I don't know if that's really an answer to your question.
That answered part of it, and you're right. That was an extremely broad question, which was like, okay, your senior thesis will be on this. So, well, you answered part of it excellently. Well, let's talk about the other part. Okay, so you have your community, right? Whether it's the pick guitar community or the GLBT community or whatever it is, right? The Korean students at Berklee community. Okay, all right, you're in the room with them. How do you break the ice? How do you,
Great.
talk about this in a way that's going to likely get people on board?
Sure. So I often think it's easier to do it one-on-one, even though that can sometimes be more intimidating to start. But I really like to ground these conversations in folks' values, right? So obviously, I'm not sitting on my stump to tell you that you go out and you organize every conservative that you've ever seen, right? Like that is not a realistic goal in many ways. And the folks that we're trying to organize are folks who maybe are not quite sold on the Green New Deal or have a stake in the Green New Deal and they don't yet know it, right? But just to preface, I'm not asking you to like go out and fight Fox News. But I often, I really like to ground in people's in their values. So I think an example of that is when I have conversations in Kentucky, it depends on the audience. But if I'm talking to just folks in my community, not usually quite as young, I will ground in this idea of dignity, right? Because I think a lot of people believe that everyone has a right to live a dignified life where they can put food on the table for their families without having to sacrifice their health. And I think dignity means a lot of different things to different people. But if you can start at that place of a shared value, maybe your shared value is equality or justice, whatever it might be, starting at that place, or even just care and compassion, right? Starting at that place and then building out and saying, you know what, actually, like this is the vision that is going to get us there, and this is why I believe this. And I wonder what you believe. And I think I'm modeling poorly in the sense that actually you should be primarily listening, but starting at that value and then asking questions and kind of agitating the folks who you are talking to say, you know what, why is it that you believe that, I don't know, cap and trade is going to stop the climate crisis, if they're in that camp or whatever it might be.
Sure, that's great. To switch gears a little bit, racial justice has been a very large topic these days. A certain trial concluded yesterday, of course. Berklee has had its own series of episodes related to racial justice. And as I'm sure, we're all aware, we've been in the fight for a long time. There aren't enough white liberals to win this, save the planet on our own. A broad-based coalition is really important, and I think personally better reflects our values. But could you talk about sort of the value of a broad-based coalition, as well as perhaps a connection between environmental justice and racial justice?
Sure. So I first do want to name that I understand that we're gathering today, both after the Chauvin trial and the death of Ma'Khia, the death of Ma'Khia Bryant. And so, I just want to be really cognizant of that fact and say that, send both, love to our Black community who's watching this, and understand that this fight is very far from over, and that real instances of violence are happening every day. And I think the answer to your last question is that I think that racial justice is inextricably intertwined with climate justice. And I think when I was getting into this fight, I both understood that reality because I was primarily in this fight for environmental justice, right? Climate change was not a top priority for me in a lot of ways. And it was this broader vision of a Green New Deal that made stopping the climate crisis and creating millions of good jobs and supporting frontline communities and taking down the violence of our system possible. So I think that's one component where it's the vision that we hold. It doesn't matter if we stop the climate crisis if we're still perpetuating economic and other systems of violence and oppression, right? We're still going to have the conditions that got us here in the first place, and we're also going to still be perpetuating that harm. And I think it's also important to just name that environmental justice advocates have been doing this work for a really long time and have often been excluded from the white environmental movement of the 70s and what we think of. I think that was something that was really hard for me at the beginning, because I was really drawn to this narrative of like, young people are here because, you know, the generations before us have like failed. And I think that's true. And that's not to say that folks in Black and Brown and Indigenous communities across the country who have been experiencing the effects of environmental racism have not been having to live with this reality and fight this reality within their communities, and maybe not even calling it climate organizing for generations. So I think it's like holding those two realities of like, one, we have to build a multiracial cross-class movement, because that's the only way we're gonna create a vision of our world that is multiracial and cross-class. And this is not new. So I think that's a short. I think it's more than a numbers game, frankly. I think it can be a numbers game. You're right that 3.5 million white people in the streets is not nearly as terrifying as a multiracial and cross-class group in the streets, because we have been so intentionally divided along the lines of race and class. And I think that we have to embody some of the practices of community that we're organizing for.
That's terrific. I have a question for you because in addition to me being Berklee faculty, a non-trivial number of folks in the audience are Berklee faculty. Do you have any requests from us? What would you say to Berklee faculty, college faculty in general, but you're speaking to Berklee?
Sure.
What's your ask?
I think my biggest ask is Sunrise is organizing young people. That is not to say that folks who, I do think that folks who are on faculty likely qualify in our definition of young people. And I think that just because I organize young people and that's my MO, doesn't mean that this fight is not cross-generational or intergenerational. That was the word I was looking for, like an intergenerational. We still get a lot of power from having intergenerational relationships and organizing together. So I'm like, I think that often people are like, oh, Sunrise only wants young people who are under the age of 35. Like, I don't qualify as a young person. And doesn't mean that you can't show up in the streets, no matter what the organizing approaches, right? Like maybe it is climate organizing, maybe it is supporting student divestment movements on campus or within Boston, or broader actions for the Green New Deal. Maybe that just means vocalizing support to the degree that you feel able, and showing up in person. And I think that, quite frankly, not being a young person is often like thrown around as an excuse to kind of abscond some responsibility. And nobody's gonna say we don't want your presence when we call for a mass turnout of people to canvass for XYZ candidate, or to do something else. Obviously, don't push your way into the places, but.
All right, you've certainly told us to get in the fight, and that's a very very true message. How about specifically when we're in the classroom? Is there stuff you feel like is missing, needs to be done more? Obviously, you haven't reviewed the Berklee curriculum, but I could say that if it focuses on two things, environmental protection is not one of those two.
I think this is a hard question, because sometimes I will have also teachers at my school ask a similar question, and like it just feels, I think that the public education system of the US is very different from like the academic world of secondary education. But my initial gut reaction to that question is that no matter what you're teaching or talking about, there are ways to ground it in the realities of the world that we face. And I think I think, for instance, even just having a conversation when we hear that another innocent Black individual has been murdered by the police, right? Just like acknowledging that at the start of class and having that conversation, which I'm sure many folks are. And I'm sure there are many folks who don't believe it's within your lane to do that, right? Like acknowledging when not just real acts of violence happen, but moments of celebration and when progress happens. And I think integrating that part of life that I don't know that any of us are ever not thinking about, right? Like I think as a generation, and also frankly, just as a community of people who care, these issues are often top of mind, and ones that we don't just like leave when we enter the classroom. And so I think recognizing that reality and welcoming it in a comfortable way is probably the best thing. I don't know if that was an answer to your question.
No, that's good. And let's flip it around here, because I will say Berklee has, I think it's 12 majors. I'm sure someone will correct me, plus the ones at Boston Conservatory, all of which have something to do with music, right? There's performance and music production and engineering and music therapy and music business and so on, but they're all music. Everyone gets a Bachelor of Music degree. Everyone here could be described, therefore, as a musician in some way or another. Beyond you're in the fight, right? If the earth goes, a whole lot of other stuff goes with it. Is there anything you feel like musicians can do to, flex their muscles, use the power they have? What would you ask of musicians?
Sure. Well, I think that if you want to, go the Pete Seeger route, you absolutely can. But that's my very nuance or lack of nuance gut response that landed incorrectly. But I think the reality is that art is is a deeply integral part of both our organizing and the way that we are able to envision the world that we want to see. And I think what I mean by that is that, one, obviously there are ways in which music is so deeply tied to organizing traditions. And if that is something that you want to directly bring in, that is always welcome. At Sunrise, we have communities around song, but also more broadly in listening to musical performance, or I think that's the most specific example, right? As a way to bring folks together in community and to really ground us in, I think, our vision and the feelings that we need to make it happen. So I think that's one kind of direction and route. I'm like, music has played such an integral role in organizing throughout history, and it will continue to do so. But I think it's not realistic, right, to say everybody's going to be singing Which Side Are You On or writing that as a result of a music degree. And I don't think in any ways that's the request. And so I think the other thing I would say is that I think two things. One, music just fundamentally is such an integral way for us to conceive the world that we want to see and for us to experience it. And I'm like, I think the joy that you bring folks, or the emotion that you kind of evoke in everyday people, is just a fundamental way of grounding us in what we need to do in our shared humanity. So just doing your jobs is enough. And I think that there are always ways for pieces even outside of the organizing community to tie back into this broader vision. So at this point, I'm kind of looping around. But I think there is both an organizing tradition around music and a way that music as an art in and of itself allows us to vision a world and to experience it together, that I think is really inherent.
Great. I think, there's a great question came in the Q&A thing. I don't know if you could see there. I can read it to you. It's from Melissa Mendel. She said, they say, what's the toughest challenge that you have faced in your activism? What was the impact it left on you, and how did it change / inspire / inform your future activism?
Yeah. So I think this is a challenge that is not in any way unique to me, but I think definitely at the start, this felt like a really lonely thing to be engaging in. And I don't say that because it didn't feel like there were national organizations who are ready and willing to support the climate movement, but because it felt like the community where I lived in Lexington, Kentucky, my school, and many of the other kind of like institutions and things that I was a part of were in no way interested in supporting this work and deemed it as really not important. And so I think, like, quite frankly, there was a year of my life where there were 5 of us who cared really deeply about starting a Sunrise Hub in Lexington. And we would organize and we would recruit and we would call people, and it would be the same 5 of us consistently. And maybe it's because we needed better skills. That's totally plausible, right? And I think sometimes it's just the reality that it takes time, and it takes one moment, and it takes a lot of hard work to like organize a mass of people into this vision. And you know, now we're turning 60, 70 people out at each of our events, right? But it has not always been that way. And I think that it was certainly hard for me to watch places like even Louisville, right? Like I used to do some organizing in Louisville, which is about an hour away, and we were able to turn out 500 people for a climate strike in Louisville.
Where?
Sorry, where?
Oh, I just didn't hear the name of the place.
Oh, in Louisville, which is Louisville, depending on.
Okay, got it.
Sorry, I swallow it like a Kentuckian, but in Louisville, which is now quite famed because of Breonna Taylor's murder. But before that, right, we were able to make real headway organizing there in ways that it just didn't feel possible in Lexington, even though the communities seemed politically very similar in some ways. So I think that's the biggest challenge. I'm like, it sucks when you don't feel like anybody's responding. And there's always going to be a period of time, unless you're truly magic, where that is going to be the reality. And it sucks. And I think once you get over that like initial bump, everything gets, I'm like, now we face a lot of challenges. Don't get me wrong. Like our hub is disproportionately white and middle and owning class, right? And that's actually not the community that is most important to organize in this moment. And I think that we are able to tackle those challenges only because we just have enough people and community to do so in the first place.
Great. Remember, other folks with questions, by all means, please post them in the Q&A. I got a question for you, and it sort of relates to, I'll share a story from, it's got to be a couple decades ago now. It was with a little sort of group of people who were trying to live in a more eco-friendly way. And one of the people in the group was talking about how they were putting a jar out to collect rainwater to water their plants. And then they added that, but because, I collect more water and the rainfall my plants need right away, and to slow the evaporation, I throw the jar in the refrigerator. And I was like, my reaction was sort of like, Gurk, gack, we have plenty of water in New England and electricity is a huge, that's kind of doing a whole lot more harm than good. But I'm not sure I took the right approach. And I should say I was not their professor. What do you do when you get someone who you feel like their heart is in the right place, but they're making a major tactical or perhaps strategic mistake?
This is hard, right? I think maybe that's the blessing of organizing in a place where there is not a lot of organizing happening, because I don't often encounter the individual action is the way that we create monumental change or whatever kind of narrative it might be. And I'm like, I think people are bought into that for a reason, right? We live in a society that in many ways has tried to fundamentally disempower in the community and the collective, right? And the power of social movement. So it makes sense if people are really bought into individual ways that they feel like they're making a tangible difference, right? Because often it's so unclear to see how mass movements could do that. And I think kind of Occupy turned the tide, even though I was 9 when it happened, and that has been changing. But certainly since Reagan, our dominant theory, right, has been that the burden is placed upon the individual and not on the collective. And so I think that's like the one thing that was kind of a tangential response, a little bit of
very important tangent.
movement nerding. And I'm like, you're right, their heart is in the right place, and there are reasons that they believe in what they're doing. And I think that, like, the person who maybe doesn't believe in the power of a Green New Deal or isn't involved in any kind of organizing, it's important to start by listening to why they're doing what they're doing and understanding that maybe you're not going to be the force that changes them, right? But even having the conversation of like, what is like, tell me about your work, and like, tell me why you believe this is the most important thing or the thing that we should be doing right now to create change, and maybe pushing back on it. And maybe you don't, right? Sometimes it's actually way harder to change people who are kind of like set in the things that the little things that they're doing than people who have never felt a sense of power in their lives. So I think that basically it's always the same approach of, I'm like, talk to people. It's not easy. You're going to have to listen to them. You have to be tactful and patient and kind and compassionate. And the only way that we change minds, no matter whose mind it is through conversations. It's not by talking at people or talking down to people. So.
Right. We have another question here for AJ Mason, the performer that you just saw. He says, shall I read it to you?
I just saw it, but.
Oh, okay. I'll read it into the record. Coming from a small town where my community deals with a lot of addiction issues, what do you think the best way is to connect social justice to folks who feel like they have enough to worry about in just getting by in everyday life?
Yeah. So I think that feels also very relevant to the place that I call home. And I think there are a few things. One, at a certain point, you're right. People need material supports to be able to organize in the first place. Like, it is really hard to get people to organize for climate justice if they're houseless, right? And if they don't have enough food, if they don't have childcare even, right? Those are real problems. And I'm like, I don't think that Sunrise, frankly, is often equipped to deal with them. And that's something that we have to navigate in our individual communities and through mutual aid networks of care. And I think the other maybe broader answer to that question is that the work that we are doing in our communities is not just about this kind of like national Green New Deal, AOC, whatever it might be, right? It's actually making the Green New Deal feel tangible. And so in Eastern Kentucky, a part of the Green New Deal is supporting communities that have been devastated by the opioid epidemic to find medical and economic support, right, to end cycles of poverty that have gotten us there in the first place, and right, like, actually support people in getting help. And I'm like, I think that sometimes Sunrise organizing is going to look like winning a $15 an hour minimum wage in your community and like feeling the tangible effects of that. Or maybe it's going to look like helping fight a housing development, right, that is displacing hundreds of people. And maybe those things are not the first thing that you think of when it comes to climate organizing, but they're part of the Green New Deal. And our job is to make the Green New Deal tangible and impact everyday people's lives. Because I believe that if people don't feel it, and if they don't believe that the government can help them or that other people can help them, and that they are not in this fight alone, right, then we're never going to change people's minds. So I think sometimes it's okay to be like, you know what? It makes no sense to try and shut down this power plant, right? Like, the first thing that's going to make sense is to get people dignified working conditions or support. So I think short answer is the Green New Deal looks like a lot of different things, and the way we win it federally is by tailoring it to our local communities.
That's great. I get, well, let's call this the penultimate question for you. And I realized that maybe this would be a question better thrown at somebody who was a multiple of your age, but you're the guest we have. So, and I think it's a very important one. What keeps you going?
Wow. I think that if I didn't actually believe in the power that we hold as young people and the power of community organizing, and I think if I didn't believe that we actually were gonna win, and maybe it's not gonna come without sacrifice, right? And it's not gonna come on the most perfect timeline or in the most perfect way. But I think that I have to hold that fundamental hope in my heart, because if I woke up every day and was just overwhelmed by the climate crisis and the timeline that we face and just like the violence of life in America, then I really don't think I could do it. So I think that's maybe corny, but Sunrise's principle is one of our principles is we shine bright. And I think that's harder some days than other. And it also doesn't have to be a corny kind of lack of understanding. But I do think a certain sense of hope and optimism.
That's great. By the way, last chance, folks out there, to type any questions in the Q&A. I guess I'd say this as we're coming up on time here. This has been really great and inspiring, hearing what you have to say. I'm feeling better, perhaps even about the future, that there's folks like you fighting the good fight and do what we can here.
No, thank you guys for having me.
Sure.
I'm like very honored to be here and excited, and just like have been really blown away by the performances and just like the work that you guys are doing.
Great. Give us you have 2 minutes. Give us our final takeaways. What do you want people to remember?
Takeaways are that I think there is nothing stopping you to building some kind of power where you're at right now. And maybe that's just by having a single conversation, and maybe that's by joining Sunrise, and it's a spectrum. And I think it's not always the right time to organize for everyone at all. And I think that there's power out there for us to have, and we can have it at any moment. So I think that's my big takeaway. Talk to people and then build your power.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Lily, for coming by and being part of this year's Earthapalooza. We've been very lucky to have you.
Thank you, guys.
All right. We're going to roll on. We're going to roll on now with some more musical entertainment. Once again, showing the great variety we have here. We have not just DAXIX or DA19, but either way, really look forward to music, followed by musical comedian Alyssa Payne. So take it away.
Hi guys, my name is The Kicks, and today I am presenting, the first song I'm presenting is called Food Chain, and I had so much fun writing the lyrics. This song is inspired by Ivanka Trump's quote. During the pandemic at the very beginning, I remember she said, "We cannot shut down the country because everybody wants to work. We all want to work." And when she said it, I was like, I'm not really sure. And it made me realize that our human spirit has been confined into two things, consuming and producing, and which made me write the song. And I made a lyric video so you guys can have a better understanding of the lyrics, and please enjoy.
First century is turning on endlessly to the ever-growing demand of luxury. I chase to gain a little bit of being happy. Deep throat, sausage, Lincoln, sex and lean. Hoard the calories in my big belly. Send a piggy into my sandwich, consuming the meat I never ever need. clear every day. You must be an intelligent marketing campaign elite. Enjoy organic grocery while we eat modified deep throat sausage Lincoln sexily. Hoard the calories in my big belly. Send the piggy into my sandwich. Consume me, the meat I never ever need. Speed up your eating, no you won't get choked. You need that energy to run that yoke. Speed up your eating, no you won't get choked. You need that energy to run on that yoke. Feed my belly until it explodes like the piggy in my tummy I just swallowed. Feed my belly until it explodes like the piggy in my tummy I just swallowed. Deep throat sausage Lincoln sexily. Hoard the calories in my big belly. Send the piggy into my sandwich. Consume me, the meat I never ever need. Okay, thank you. So that was my first song, Food Chain. And before I play my second song, I would like to do a little promotion. On May 22nd at 3 p.m., I am hosting a Stop Asian Hate public demonstration concert. So I would really love for every single person to come and support, because the oppression of anyone is the oppression of all. When you deny a single minority or all minority, essentially you're denying the right for yourself to call yourself an American. And I know we all love to eat fried rice, okay? So if you want to continue eating the fried rice, you need to come show up on May 22nd, Saturday at 3 p.m. and you can register the event at here, and I'm sending you the event website. You can register here on Eventbrite. So come out and show your support, bring out the most creative slogan and signs, and it's gonna be some loud singing, dancers. I mean, I'm actually, in fact, in the studio sponsored by Dance Complex, who is very generous to provide dance rehearsal studios. So please come by if you're in Boston. And so now I'm gonna perform my second song. Is called Throne. It's a very silly song. It's very fun. The inspiration is video games. So I hope you guys enjoy. I'm running on this tricky winding brick road that leads me to my big show, with dips I trip and I fall into the foes. Strange creatures everywhere I go, a cat in the human world. I learn to dance with this place doesn't remind me of a mission accomplished alone. I'm my master and I start the training. Kick, stretching my vision to the edge. Can I find the rhythm of the race? Only on this yellow brick and roll I say yeah. Danger, keep coming on this track. Large flies, red eyes behind my back. Caution, must prepare your time. No one gets on the throne with a thorn in his feet. I keep my boundaries, touching with the beat.
feet. All of the challenges I said bring it to me. Come on, I said come on. No one gets off the throne with that thorn in his feet. I keep my boundaries, but you with the thick feet. All of the challenges I said bring it to me. Come on, I said come on. No one gets on the throne without thorn in his feet. No one gets on the throne without thorn in his feet. I'm getting pretty good at this. I can chill and drink coffee. I'm laying out in the sun, singing bang bang chicka boom boom. And then my master came along. He was pissed that I fell at home. He grabbed me and said, danger can't be coming on just because you're getting good. It doesn't mean you can't drop your cool. And stop the manicure and pack your bag. Stop the training right now, ASAP. Beady 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 kitty sweetie sweetie. I'm back on track. No one gets on the throne with that thorn in his feet. I keep my boundaries, punching with the thick beat. All of the challenges, I said bring it to me. Come on, I said come on. No one gets on the throne with that thorn in his feet. I keep my boundaries, punching with the thick beat. All of the challenges, I said bring it to me. Come on, I said come on.
Okay, thank you guys so much. And I hope to see all of you at the May 22nd Stop Asian Hate concert. Thank you.
Hi everybody, my name is Alyssa Payne. I'm wearing green because of plants. I got some peacock earrings and some two wildlife with me. Yeah, bunny and a sloth. I'm super into musical comedy. I have a YouTube channel where I write and compose and try to orchestrate just songs that I think will make people laugh. I also like using this platform though as a way to bring attention to things. So this first song is a really serious song I wanted to make just to like open people's eyes to deer. You know, I live in Georgia, so there's a lot of deer in the backyards and mornings and nights, and so this is just a very heartfelt song I wanted to write to just make more people aware. Yeah. Yeah. Here is something I bet you don't know. When the sun goes down, that's our cue to go. We cross the street without the fear of your car, and then you look out the window, and there we are. It's deer o'clock, that's right. We freeze when we see headlights. We take over your neighborhood, and then we stay there all night. 3 a.m. we drink. 4 a.m. we leap. 5 a.m., 6 a.m., that's when all the fun begins. We never go to sleep. Nope. My hooves and we run. We hit the hunters with their own guns. Smelling all the flowers, staying up all hours, cause deer are number one. It's deer o'clock, kick this lantern. Break everything you can with your antlers. This is a doe, this is a buck, and this is a deer who doesn't give up. Very heartfelt, some original art for you. I hope you enjoyed that. So that was one of the over quarantine. I just thought it'd be a good idea to start just trying to be consistent within writing, especially with Broadway being shut down. I forgot to say that I'm a music theater major at the conservatory. So I just thought that start being consistent and just writing a lot of work. And like I said, later we go on and I've written some stuff about like social issues, and that has another animal in it. That's Fredgy the Pigeon. Go check it out. But this next song, speaking of quarantine, this was one of the first songs I wrote. And so I'm back at home. I'm in Georgia with my lovely family, as well as some old toys of mine, some old friends of mine. So this was a song I made. It kind of makes fun of quarantine, but there's some guest appearances from some old girls of mine.
We're back in Lavender.
Left school, came home for what I thought was a week-long spring break. Little did I know that once I returned, I'd be here for 12 weeks straight. All I packed in my book bag was this Berklee sweatshirt. Now I'm back in my childhood bedroom, trying to make it work. I'm talking no makeup, no problem, just me and my messy hair. Ripped up Mickey Mouse pajama pants, you know I got 2 pair. Nail polish, every color, neon pink to blue. Put that with this hat from Limited 2. Style trends that once were known as taboo is now the only thing I do. Quarantine fashion, it's more than a lifestyle. It's my passion, dressing the extra mile. Posing, voguing, looking ever so chic. I honestly couldn't tell you if I shaved this week. Found this pink t-shirt from my old Christian middle school. Time to make this look kill, like Cain and Abel. Add some sweatpants at a heel, that's big, bright, confident, and bold. And throw a blanket over the shoulder, in case you get cold. Old homecoming dress with mismatched fuzzy socks. Why watch my weight when I can be rewatching 30 Rock? Add some Mardi Gras beads, flowers, and a purse from the past. And just for the heck of it, this Phantom of the Opera mask. What do you girls think of my look? Am I living through World War II again? Because your outfit is the bomb. Definitely a revolutionary look. Are you ladies thinking what I'm thinking?
Quarantine
Save the planet by investing in carbon capture technology or rethinking water transportation. So quarantine fashion, it's what we live to do. I mean, I don't know about passion helps us make it. There's through. More important Our things. Obsession with expression is the best history lesson from 1784 to the Great Depression. Pajamas all night, yoga pants all day. Found old point shoes from ballet. Going through the clothes in my mom's closet. Found this nightgown that matches kit. Spend all this time locked in my room. Nice shirt only if I'm on Zoom. What can I say? I have all day, so my living room is now its own runway. Yes, get it, get it.
What are you wearing?
It's my quarantine fashion. Look, I even put my GoPro lanyard on so I can pretend to swipe into the kitchen because you know I'm not at school. I'm here for the next semester. So there's a quarantine fashion.
All right.
Yay, so hopefully you enjoyed that. Yes, guest star Lainey in my American Girl dolls. Kind of like I said earlier, I loved American Girl dolls, of course, growing up. I got into them kind of old, but I thought it was really cool just like learn about history and learn about, and Lainey, you know, like just Earth and global warming at kind of such a young age and in such a cool way. And I think in comedy, that's one of the reasons I love it so much is I try to use it as a way to introduce, you know, maybe broader topics in a more light way to kind of spark a question that makes others do research and just, you know, wonder for themselves. So I really hope you enjoyed those videos. I'm gonna put my YouTube in the chat. Once again, my name is Alyssa Payne. Please subscribe if you're interested in seeing more. And happy Earthapalooza!
Thank you so much to Kix and Alyssa. That was fantastic. And it shows again that not only a variety of styles, but a variety of messages. Really, not everything works with every person. Sometimes, like in that last song, Quarantine Fashion, I love this, just a couple little lines about saving the environment worked into a totally different song. And I think it gives it a lot of kick. So well done, both of you. And now we're fortunate to have esteemed colleague Ross Bresler, art history professor. He's always a person where whenever I want to make sure an event is really good, he's my go-to guy. And I was like, all right, Ross, I'm counting on you this year. And perhaps hindsight, this has been a solid enough event either way, but then, let's just push the limits, set the bar to how good Earthapalooza can get. All right, Ross, the floor is yours.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Kevin, for the very generous introduction. And hopefully you guys can hear me out there. And I have to say, if I would have known that you had me on after those 2 sets of videos, I might not have agreed, because that is a very, very hard act to follow. Like, this is going to be so boring after the absolute joy and sophistication and brilliance of those last 2 performances. And also, I thought your interview was fantastic, Kevin, with the Sunrise organization, Lily. Not to say that it is my plan to put you all to sleep after that, but this is my quarantine fashion at Berklee College of Music. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with all of you as we get ourselves going for today. And the topic that I'm going to be sharing with all of you, I've entitled Race and Hope in the American Landscape. And we're going to be talking a lot about this painting that's on the screen. And the painting you're looking at sort of came to my attention. I'd never seen it before, as it was a part of the inauguration ceremonies for Joe Biden in January. And there was a part of that process that, again, I'd never heard of before, where apparently part of the inauguration is that the newly elected president or re-elected president gets to choose a painting that then hangs behind them when they're having an inauguration lunch with the U.S. Congress. This is sort of part of the day's events. Obviously, because of COVID, this was a very stripped down process this year. But the painting that was chosen by the Bidens, Landscape with a Rainbow from 1859 by an artist named Robert S. Duncanson, that'll be our focus today, highlights a lot of things. This is a vehicle for us, a lens into a lot of different kinds of stories that I want to share. It is a story about what the American landscape meant to the people living in 1859. That is, this is a kind of a time machine for us. What did this vision of America mean for the artist Robert Duncanson in the years leading up to the Civil War? Also, the fact that this is a painting that was chosen just in January by the Bidens. That means this is a painting that also says a lot about our own time, sort of what we think about the American landscape, what's important about it, how we create our own sort of myths of what this land means to us today, not only in the time that these works of art were made. And as we'll see, the American landscape, as you all know, can be a very political kind of context, and not only in the pre-Civil War 1859 time period when this thing was made, but also in our own time. So this will be a story about painters, it'll be a story about politics, it'll be a story about race, and as we'll see, it'll also be a story about hope, is the plan. So the selection of a painting as part of the inauguration ceremonies is a tradition that has been around since the 80s. It is Ronald Reagan that first initiated this at his second inaugural luncheon in 1985. And the painting that he chose is this beautiful Jasper Francis Cropsey painting of the Hudson River from 1860. And frankly, all of the choices by all of the presidents until more recent times were fairly benign. Beautiful landscape to sit behind the table. This was Reagan's. Obama's first inaugural luncheon in 2009, another gorgeous landscape painting. Most of these come from the National Collection, some from the Smithsonian, others are lent from other museums around the country. The second Obama inauguration in 2013, another beautiful landscape, in this case, a view of Niagara Falls from 1856. So this is not really a part of the inauguration that really gained much attention. It was something I was very unfamiliar with until this year. And things started to get a little political with this aspect of the inauguration ceremonies, as will surprise no one out there in Zoom land, with the Trump inauguration luncheon. So the painting that was chosen to stand behind the newly elected president, as you can see, is not a landscape. It's a narrative painting. It's a history painting. Painting by an artist named George Caleb Bingham called The Verdict of the People, painted in 1855. And the choice was pretty controversial. Here's just an article from the Washington Post, the controversy behind the painting that will hang at Trump's inaugural luncheon. So what is so controversial about this? Well, there's a couple of ways we could dive in. First of all, the painting that was chosen for the Trump inaugural is one of a series that Bingham painted in the 1850s. Those paintings are currently held in the St. Louis Art Museum in Missouri. And the one that hung behind Trump, George Caleb Bingham's The Verdict of the People from 1855, shows this kind of raucous response to a recently, the results of a recent election that were being announced. Now we have to put this into some context, 1855. So in the previous year, 1844, saw the passage of something that is called the Kansas-Nebraska Act. And this was a bill that was presented in the US Congress by Illinois Senator Stephen Douglas that sought to allow, actually didn't seek, it actually succeeded, to allow what we call popular sovereignty to determine whether slavery should be allowed in new territories west of the Mississippi River. This was very controversial. It passes, that essentially allow people to vote by territory whether or not they want slaves, whether they want slavery to be legal or not. This bill, when passed, essentially did away with an earlier compromise piece of legislation, something called the Missouri Compromise of 1820, that banned slavery north of the 3630 parallel, except in Missouri. That was the compromise. So this is what the Missouri Compromise looked like in 1820, and this is that line that was meant to separate slave states from free states. With the passage the year before that Bingham painting, right, hanging behind the Trump inaugural, it does away with this, right? So this is the Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854, which essentially allowed people to vote whether or not in all of this territory slavery should be allowed. So when this thing is painted, it came at a time of great division in the country, of challenging the notion of human dignity, of opportunity for participation in the electoral process, the ability for humans to own other humans. And this is the image that was chosen. And not only is it a raucous response to a election, also, the people who are here and aren't here in this painting are telling, not only in an 1855 context, but like our subject today, the landscape with the rainbow. This is a story that tells us not only about the time in which it was made, but also about the time in which we're living. So you'll notice in the painting from the Trump inaugural, there's only one person of color in the painting. And he is the guy in the left foreground, shown pushing a wheelbarrow. There are basically no women in this painting, save for a small group that is organized on this balcony over here, right, kind of pushed across to the side. And as Trump is taking office in 2017 as a result of a very contentious election, we have this kind of highlighting of a contentious election. And the overwhelming majority of people that are here laughing, guffawing, and celebrating this victory that's the subject of the painting, these are, in essence, the same people who are celebrating the recent election of Donald Trump. So the choice of painting got political in 2017. And so when we look at this painting, Landscape with a Rainbow, that was part of the Biden inaugural, this seemingly just beautiful landscape backdrop has become political. This was deliberately chosen by Dr. Jill Biden. This was selected by her in concert with one of the curators from the Smithsonian. Biden said during the ceremony, "I like the rainbow in this painting. There are good things to follow." We're all hoping that that is the case. There's an additional burden placed on this ceremony, right? This inaugural selection of the painting, because the room in which this took place is a room within the US Congress that's called National Statuary Hall. And exactly 2 weeks before that Landscape with a Rainbow was put on display, this happened in that room. That is, this is one of the centers of the mob that broke into the Capitol on the 6th of January. And if you think that this painting hanging on the wall can only tell us a story about the 1850s, that this is something that is a product of our past age, the storming of the Capitol reminded us that that history, the years leading up to the Civil War itself, the fallout of the Civil War, this is absolutely contemporary, current These are issues that we still need to untangle. This was in the halls of the US Congress 2 weeks before Landscape with a Rainbow was in the halls of the US Congress. Okay, so that's our kind of preamble. So what do we know about this painting? And what do we know about the artist, Robert Duncanson? So Robert Duncanson, born in 1821, dies in 1872, was the son of a free African-American mother and a Canadian father. So he's mixed race. He is categorized as African-American during his lifetime. He will spend most of his professional life in Cincinnati, Ohio, where he will be hailed as one of the most successful, certainly one of the most well-known African-American painters of the 1850s and 60s and into the 1870s. Right? So he does achieve some acclaim in his lifetime. From a very early part in his life, the painter Duncanson had an active role in the abolitionist movement, which was very strong in Cincinnati, Ohio. In fact, there was a group of abolitionist leaders, businessmen who funded a trip for Robert Duncanson to leave Cincinnati and travel to Europe. This way he'd be able to study the old masters of painting. He went to France, he went to Italy, he went to the United Kingdom, he may have gone to Germany. And so it gave him a chance to encounter the great art of the past, funded by abolitionists in Cincinnati. So what kinds of paintings would he have seen on his trip? This is a painting showing the inside of the Louvre Museum in Paris, made by an American artist actually in 1831. So what did landscape painting look like when Robert Duncanson is learning his chops, sort of learning how to paint, learning from the great masters? Well, in Europe, there's basically two different kinds of landscapes that he would have digested. One can be represented like a painting, or by a painting like this. This is by a French artist by the name of Claude Lorraine, showing the ruins of the Roman Forum. This is from the 17th century. And there's a whole school of landscape paintings kind of led by Claude Lorraine, showing the kind of romantic ruins of ancient civilizations, soft romantic light, this kind of hazy neoclassical vision of a pastoral landscape beset with ruins dotting the interior and exterior of the canvas. So there's a lot of this kind of stuff going on, and a lot of this kind of stuff that Duncanson would have been exposed to. So this is kind of door number one. Door number two is probably best represented by the British artist John Constable, whose painting known as the Haywain from 1821 in the Tate Gallery in London represents another way of depicting landscape, something that's quaint, something that's agricultural, something that's kind of anecdotal, the kind of intimacy of the landscape, man woven into the natural world. If one is sort of epic and grandiose and sublime, the other is kind of domestic and sort of palpable, intimate. And Duncanson played with both of these. Right? So Duncanson, when he gets home, will play both with the sublime, epic, crumbling ruins kind of sublime landscape, like this painting of the ruins of Pompeii from 1871. So we can speak that language. He'll also have a lot to do with this kind of more intimate, quiet, knowable man woven into nature, like this one, Buho Floodwaters from 1851. Now, Duncanson, even though he certainly learned a lot from the European painters that he had a chance to study, he didn't think that he had to take off his hat to any of them, that he was perfectly capable, perfectly able to stand toe-to-toe with any of them. He had this to say in a letter that he wrote home from his trip. My trip to Europe has to some extent enabled me to be the judge of my own talent. And of all the landscapes that I saw in Europe, I don't feel discouraged. That is, I can do what they can do, right? I can be successful. Right? And so he comes back sort of laden with all of this experience of looking at European painting, the kinds of landscapes that he would have encountered in the United States, right? The kinds of things that his contemporaries were working on look a lot like the painting that's on the screen. In fact, there's a group of artists who primarily worked in and around the Hudson River Valley in New York, that have later become known as the Hudson River School. Artists like Thomas Cole, whose painting of the Oxbow I'm showing on the screen here from 1836, have this, again, it relates more to that kind of sublime vision of Claude Lorraine, but this is something that is uniquely American. right? This vision here in the 1830s, and remember that the United States is not that far past the Mississippi River in 1836. And there's this idea that this land that will be conquered, that will be eaten up by this growing country, has been given to us by God. That this is, again, what was called in the 19th century, manifest destiny. This is God's land. And the type of landscapes that American artists were making, these are Duncanson's contemporaries, are powerful, explosive. They're always just before a storm or just after a storm. There's always a busted tree in one corner, vivid sunrise in the other corner, a vivid sunset in the back of mountains. Here's Frederick Edwin Church. Again, these are going to be examples of American, again, what we call Hudson River School painters. These are contemporaries with Duncanson, the kind of American landscapes that he would have had a chance to look at, not just here in the Hudson River Valley, but pushing all the way to the West Coast. This is one of the most extraordinary things you can ever see in life, Among the Sierra Nevada by Albert Bierstadt from 1868. If you're sitting there on your Zoom couch going, I want to see more of those paintings, those are incredible things. Well, you're in luck, especially if you're in Boston. We have an incredible collection of American art at the MFA here. I say here, I'm in Boston, in the Art of America's wing, and a really strong collection of these Hudson River School, dramatic, passionate kind of landscapes, especially up on the second floor of the America's wing. There's a room that's called the Salon. And they've kind of hung it like a 19th century exhibition would look, kind of floor to ceiling paintings. And there are a lot of these kind of explosive, thunderstorms, sunset, sunrise, blasted trees, Hudson River School. It's awesome. And so Duncanson certainly would have been influenced by these kinds of depictions of the American landscape as well. So Duncanson comes back. And again, the abolitionists of Cincinnati sent him to Europe. And then when he gets back to Cincinnati, the abolitionists will put him to work. Some of the work that he'll do for leaders in the abolitionist movement in Cincinnati include work for a man by the name of Nicholas Longworth, who was a very wealthy philanthropist. He was a horticulturist and also a major player in the abolitionist movement in Cincinnati. His home, you can still visit today in Cincinnati. Today it's called the Taft Museum. And Duncanson was hired to cover the interior of this, what is today a museum, then a private home, with landscape murals. Right? So these are painted directly on the wall surface, all by Duncanson. You can still go visit these things today. Here's a look at the entryway with the Duncanson murals and just some other views of these beautiful landscapes that he has created inside of, again, what is today the Taft Museum in Cincinnati. Now, this landscape by Duncanson, we return to Kentucky. Mason Lilly, are you still out there in the Zoom universe? Because we're going to Kentucky, sort of, kind of, right? You didn't think you were going to get that when you signed up for Zoomapalooza. And by that, I mean Earthapalooza. So this is a painting that Duncanson makes of the city of Cincinnati, where he was living, from Kentucky. And this is important, because if you don't know your American geography, especially during the years of the Civil War, Cincinnati, Ohio, more or less where this star is right on the border with Kentucky. Ohio was a free state and Kentucky was a slave state. So literally, Duncanson could see slavery from across the Ohio River, right, that separates Kentucky from Ohio and from the city of Cincinnati. And in this landscape that he paints, he's sort of depicting the free industrial Cincinnati as being something distinct from the rural agricultural slave state of Kentucky itself. So when you look into the background of this thing, this is from 1851, you can see this sort of prosperous industrial state. You've got smokestacks, you've got built up houses, apartment blocks. This is a bustling free city on one side of the Ohio River in the free state of Ohio. And then on our side of the Ohio River, the vantage point where the painting is located in Kentucky, we see an agrarian state. We see faces of color who are hoeing the land, who are doing laundry, that there's this kind of distinction between what living free and what living under oppression can be in the way that those two things are juxtaposed from one another. other ways that Duncanson, the painter of landscape with a rainbow that is our focus today, that hung in as a part of the Biden inaugural, can be seen in an extraordinary project, which unfortunately we don't have a visual record of, which was a collaboration between Robert Duncanson and an African-American photographer by the name of James Ball, who collaborated on what apparently was a giant mammoth panorama. Like, it was an exhibition you would walk in and it would work in 360 degrees, 600-yard wide panorama called the Mammoth Pictorial Tour of the United States, comprising views of the African slave trade, just like at the Cyclorama, DJ. And this tour had imagery, sound, light, paintings by Duncanson, highlighting the horrors of human bondage and the transatlantic slave trade. This was offered for visiting in Cincinnati, and then, wait for it, it came to Boston. This was the only 2 stops on this tour. We have some written accounts of what it was like, both in Cincinnati and in Boston, but unfortunately no images. But another way in which Duncanson was an active participant in the abolitionist movement. We also know that he did some illustrations of Uncle Tom's Cabin, Harriet Beecher Stowe, published in 1852. And the book Uncle Tom's Cabin, an anti-slavery novel, to put it mildly, was, hold on to your hats if you don't know this, the single best-selling novel of the 19th century in the United States, and the second best-selling book of the entire 19th century after the Bible in the United States, Uncle Tom's Cabin. A book that Harriet Beecher Stowe, she drew upon her own experience growing up in Cincinnati. Right? So again, across the Ohio River from the slave state of Kentucky. So a lot of interconnections here. Duncanson has one painting of Uncle Tom and little Eva from Uncle Tom's Cabin. This is painted just a year after that book is published. Okay, so this is a lot of background about Duncanson, his education, the kinds of landscapes he would have been exposed to, his participation within the abolitionist movement, especially within Cincinnati. And so I want to focus more sort of squarely here on this painting. And I'm going to start by reading you a quote from a journalist from the Washington Post. This was an article that was published right after the inauguration, a closer look at Robert Duncanson, the Black landscape artist behind the inaugural painting presented to the Bidens. Let's start with this. Kelsey Abels. The previous landscape paintings that were chosen, right, as we saw for the Obama inauguration, for the Reagan inauguration, those other ones captured the raw power and grand scale of the landscape and the strength of the human experience, as we've seen. Also, some of those artists are very much associated with the Hudson River School, that American bombastic landscape tradition that we talked about a moment ago. But Abels goes on. Duncanson, however, embraced the landscape genre to achieve a more complicated end. With tiny figures and enveloping valleys, his landscapes don't make a grandiose claim to this land, justified by the heavens. Instead, they ask humbly and humanly for a place in it. I thought that was a really brilliant turn of phrase. That is, we have here again a Black artist who can see slavery literally from his studio in the years leading up to the Civil War, in a period in which he himself played an active role in the abolitionist movement, giving us this welcoming, hopeful, rainbow, hopefully good things to come, thank you, Jill Bryden, view of what America was and what America could be. And in many respects, I think that this is the message that we are meant to take from this today. America as it can be, what we can hope this can become, even though it's a painting from 150 years ago. One of the curators from the Smithsonian, and this was the woman, Eleanor Jones Harvey, who aided Dr. Jill Biden in selecting the painting, had this to say. As a free man of color, living in Cincinnati, an abolitionist stronghold, Duncanson was able to be a successful artist. His choice to focus on landscape painting reflects the power of that genre to convey our cultural aspirations. This composition, still from Harvey, fulfills that yearning for peace and prosperity, the benefits of democracy for all, regardless of race. Now, interestingly, I just read to you from two, well, one a journalist and the other a curator, sort of talking about what this painting means. And certainly, I think we can understand the intentionality of choosing this painting by the Bidens, by Dr. Jill Biden in particular, as a foil to the painting that Donald Trump had chosen, as a foil to what they saw as how the Trump administration represented itself, what its priorities were, that this was meant to be a fundamental change. There was an intentionality in difference here. The interesting thing is that Duncanson, given who he was, given how active he was in the abolitionist movement, didn't really think about race when he talked about his own paintings, according to him. So he wrote a letter to his son at the end of his life, Duncanson. Fascinating. Okay, call your tattoo artist, because this should go somewhere. This is Duncanson writing. I have no color on the brain. All I have on the brain is paint. I care not for color. Love is my principle. Order is the basis. Progress is the end. Fascinating. So are we placing too much meaning onto this? Are we seeking too much meaning? That is, all arts, whether it's music, painting, poetry, or whatever, these things don't have expiration dates on when their meaning ceases. This might have meant something very different to Robert Duncanson in the 1850s on the eve of the Civil War than it means to us in January of 2021. That doesn't make one meaning more valuable than the other, but they interrelate. Both of these time periods, the 1850s and the 2020s, are interrelated as we look into the future and try to figure out what that landscape is going to mean for us. Now, Duncanson died in 1872 in Detroit. And he was buried in a cemetery there, a historical cemetery called Woodland Cemetery, in an unmarked grave. And just a year before this painting, Landscape of the Rainbow, which we've been looking at, is chosen to be a part of the Biden inaugural, it was decided to raise some money to get Robert Duncanson a gravestone. This was led by the Detroit Institute of Arts, who raised the money. And after 147 years, the Detroit Institute of Art, this is June 2019, so a good year and a half before the inaugural, they raised money and got Robert Duncanson a headstone. This is the front of it, Robert S. Duncanson, 1821 to 72, and there it is. I have no color on the brain. All I have on the brain is paint. Headstone donated by the Detroit Fine Arts Breakfast Club. And then the back of this thing, you don't see this a lot in cemeteries, is actually a color reproduction of one of his paintings from 1871, painted based on his experience visiting Scotland. And there it is, right, in the cemetery in Detroit, Michigan. So, people, ladies, gentlemen, Berkeleyites out there in the universe, the selection of this painting in January of this year tells us a lot about ourselves. It tells us a lot about our past. It tells us about where we want to be. It demonstrates for us, yet again, the power of how we view the landscape, how we think about this planet that we are sharing, what it means, how we tell stories about it, is something that continues to change, continues to unfold. And I am hopeful for the future. As Dr. Jill Biden says, good things are coming. And I hope you all feel the same. So thank you very, very much for taking time out. And thank you so much to Kevin Block-Schwenk, who is, to put it mildly, the man. Right? So thank you, Kevin, for hosting this and putting this together. We are extraordinarily proud of you. And thank you very much, everybody. All right, and with that, I'm going to stop the sharing and see if anybody's got any questions out there.
Oh yeah, questions.
I made it within the time zone. All right. Any questions out there in the universe while you have me captive?
Can you talk a little bit about the rainbow? I know that the modern curator said a good thing to follow. Do you think the artist was painting the rainbow with that in mind, or
absolutely, absolutely? And so I think that there is given the body of his work, and certainly as we saw, Duncanson wore a lot of different kind of landscape hats. And so it's sort of like, a band that can play like a really rocking, 2.5 minute song and blow you out of the room, but then can play like a meandering 8-minute long kind of jam song, right? That they can sort of put on different kind of musical hats. I think with Duncanson, that the kind of the intimacy of those scenes, that even though he can play bombast with the best of them, he can play Sunset, he could play Ruins of Pompeii, that there is something a little bit more knowable about his paintings, like overall. And so I think in that context, Kevin, the rainbow in that landscape and the time in which it's painted, and it doesn't write about that painting in particular, so we don't have that direct kind of primary source evidence. But nothing that we know about him, nothing that we know about his body of work suggests that that is meant to be anything other than a hopeful view of that American landscape. I think that's the best that we can deal with, Kevin. There's no answer key on the back. I painted this rainbow because : please read, that kind of thing. I hope that makes sense, Kevin.
It does. Thank you. And, can you see there's a question?
Yeah, Christelle. How you doing, Christelle? You out there? Are you allowed to turn your sound on, Christelle, in this Zoom universe? Is Kevin allowing you to speak? No?
That's a negative. Attendees can't speak. I'm sorry.
Oh, Christelle. All right. They will not let you. I will speak for you on your behalf. Are the paintings given for free like a donation just lent to the White House? So Christelle, they are lent temporarily just for the purpose of the inaugural. And then they go home. So that painting, the Duncanson painting, is part of the Smithsonian American Art Museums in Washington. So that is now back in place. The controversy with the Trump one, with the Bingham painting, started because when it was announced that this was going to be the painting, there were people who lobbied the St. Louis Art Museum not to lend it, right? That it would have been within their purview. This was an ask of an independent institution. And the museum basically said, we are not politicians. When the president calls and says, we would like to borrow one of these paintings, then there goes the paintings. So this is not a gift in that sense, Christelle. This is a loan for the purpose of the inaugural. Make sense? Excellent. You got it. And I'm going to see you tomorrow, Christelle, at the Berklee Performance Center. Wait. There it is. See you tomorrow. All right. Other questions? Let me see in the Q&A. All right. Anonymous attendee. All right. Anonymous attendee. Did Duncanson write at all about his experiences traveling in Europe? If not, is there any record of his thoughts? Well, thank you very much, anonymous attendee. So we have letters that survive by Duncanson to his son towards the end of his life. But we don't have an autobiography in that sense, in the way that we do of other, in fact, even other African American artists of his period. And if that's something that you're interested in exploring for other artists, I can introduce you to an artist by the name of Henry O. Tanner, who was an African American artist who publishes his autobiography around 1900. If you want to kind of get yourself into the mindset of that period. Duncanson, unfortunately, anonymous attendee, ends his life not really in the best of circumstances. He's put into a sanatorium. The thought is that he became mentally unstable. And the explanation that's been given by some sort of scholars of this particular period is that because artists, and not just in the 19th century, but historically, very frequently used lead-based paint, especially for their white pigments, come from lead. And the long exposure to lead has really awful consequences for the health of the artists. And they think that essentially lead poisoning made him unstable, which sent him to a sanatorium towards the end of his life. And then he dies relatively unknown in Detroit. And his reputation has only been resurrected in subsequent time. So I hope that that kind of helps a little bit out there, anonymous attendee. All right, Yuval, how you doing? Oh, you can't talk to me. Okay, so Yuval, were there any other examples where US presidents have politicized art for their agenda, is the question. So, well, first of all, Yuval, it's nice to hear from you, and I'm gonna see you at the Berklee Performance Center over there on Friday. So I'm gonna answer this question in a slightly different way. The real question is, has there ever been a US president that has not used art for political propaganda? They all do it, right? In one way or another. Presidents, popes, princes, emperors, dukes, duchesses. This is one of the major powerful arms at your disposal. You can use art as a propaganda tool. That can be through posters, that can be through exhibitions that you support, exhibitions that you visit. It could be through buildings that you construct. And so there's a recent case of this where there was a law that was almost passed. This was right at the tail end of the Trump presidency, that has subsequently been revoked by Joe Biden, that essentially made it mandatory for all federal buildings to be constructed from now forward to use the classical language of Greek and Roman architecture. That is, all buildings should look like the MFA, essentially. And that all this modern art is just, all these modern, funky, geometric buildings, that this is sort of taking away from the core meaning of our society. And that went through committee, that was ready to be passed, that no federal building could look like anything other than the MFA. And again, that, with the big giant ionic columns on the front, think of the Capitol building in Washington, the Supreme Court, the State House here in Boston, the Bullfinch building. And so that's just one of a million examples, Yuval. Even during the Civil War, if we're gonna play that game, during the Civil War, the Capitol building itself, the dome under which the landscape with a rainbow, right, was presented, that building was in the process of being constructed during the Civil War. And Lincoln made it an economic priority to complete the dome of the Capitol building during the war to demonstrate the solidarity of the Union in the conflict with the South. So art always tells history, and is always used. Hope that works for you, Yuval. See you Friday. All right, so I got Reka. Did Duncanson paint or show racism in Europe while he traveled around or later? Thank you, Reka. I hope you're still out there in the universe. And our office misses you, Reka. Reka and I are colleagues, and we share an office, as is Marion Yee, I think, is out there too. We got our whole art history office all together in one place. I'm the only one in that room now. So like a lot of other artists of color, Reka, Duncanson was much more highly regarded in Europe than he was at home. That there was a much safer landing spot for artists of color. Marion Yee is writing in the chat, don't touch my desk. Marion, I'm just gonna say this right now, and I want you to envision this. What's the worst thing I could be doing on your desk? And just keep thinking that over and over again until we end the isolation in the fall, and I'll just let that stew over there. So Reka, there are a lot of examples of prominent African-American artists who were rejected in this country, who found a home, who found awards, who found patrons in Europe at the end of the 19th century, well into the teens and the 20s. Much in the same way, Berklee College of Music students, that a lot of musicians of color who were unable to play all of the venues in this country, who were treated as second-class citizens, were hailed as heroes in Europe. So I hope that sort of helps. Excellent. Okay. Well, thank you all again very much. And again, thank you to Kevin and all of the panelists. And don't ever put me on ever again after incredible music by students, Kevin. Please.
Noted. I make no promises.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Ross. So before our last two performers, I want to share something really quickly. I know some of us probably do have the Earthapalooza program, and you can always put your email address in the chat or request one. I'm going to show you a short version of what's on the third page. Ross, if you can kill your video.
Oh, I'm out. Okay, so I'm just stopping my video.
Yep.
There we go.
All right. A prettier version of this. I like to say 5 things you can do to help the environment. There's vibes. V for vote. That's our register to vote. Sorry, for Sunrise Movement. Lily talked a lot about that. I for individuality. Focus on ways you could express yourself that don't just involve more and more stuff. Be the change you want to see. Eat earth friendly and save energy. So, all right, right now we have some more music to you. You've seen an incredible variety in style, if not much variety in quality, because it's all been most excellent. And we'll be rolling forward with that. Next up is Claire Davis. Claire, the floor is yours.
Hi, Kevin, and hi, everyone who's watching. First of all, thank you so much for having me on this panel and at this event. It really is such an honor. And all the music and the conversation tonight has also been wonderful. I guess a little bit about the song that you're about to hear. It's called Something to Believe In. It was inspired by, I should say it was written on a day where the California fires were just raging this past fall semester, and the smoke was carrying all the way over to the Boston skyline and was obscuring the sun. And I was sitting on my rooftop on one of those days, and I thought, wow, this is beautiful imagery, but such a horrible, dark thing that is underlying all of this. This was actually co-written with my friends Darby Sabin and Jensen Krall. And we wanted to write a song that kind of encompasses this year that we've been going through in all sorts of ways, and kind of just remind everyone that there are still things to believe in. There's still something to believe in that we can wake up for and can continue to fight for to make some change in this world. So yeah.
Shadows and ashes mark burnt oak tree graves. The tide slowly swallowed the shore. Landscapes of cinder like cigarette trays. Yesterday lines the ocean floor. Smoke blowing in from red-eyed California. Her breath dims what's left of the sky. Waving red flags we all heard when they warned us. Yeah, we all sit back and wonder why. All of us just lie in wait while the world around goes up in flames. Closing our eyes to the state of our lives, fantasizing and dreaming of rain. So wake me up with something to believe in. Spitting our poisons to passerby strangers. Every word is a weapon of war. Proud liars' tongues blind our lives to the dangers. We forget just what we're fighting for, as all of us just lie in wait while the world around goes up in flames. Closing fantasizing and dreaming of rain. So wake me up with something to believe in. If roses can grow in the shade, if the sun still can rise on the coldest of days, if bleeding hearts can love through the pain, then what's my excuse not to change? What's my excuse not to change? I refuse to lie and wait while the world around goes up in flames. Let's open our eyes to the state of our lives, wring the clouds out and dance down the rain. I'll wake you up with something to believe in. Our time's not up, there's something to believe in. Just wake up, there's so much to believe in. Just wake up, there's something to believe in.
Thank you all so much for listening, and thanks again, Kevin, for having me. The next song that you guys have queued up next it's called Better Place. And first of all, I have to give a huge thank you to my bandmates, Dakota Maykrantz on drums and Leo Sun on guitar. They were so supportive and so helpful in making these videos. I was like, guys, I have 2 songs, I need videos. Can you guys come over and help me play with a bunch of plants surrounding us? And they were super great about it. Wonderful guys. This song Better Place was written about 2 years ago now, in a we could never have imagined the situation that we are in currently 2 years ago. And I think the song is definitely very fitting for the times. It was kind of written out of a place of isolation, and hoping that we can all be in a better place wherever we are currently. And we can all agree that is very fitting for the current situation. So yeah, this one's called Better Place.
You don't mind. Give me your angels and your devils too, and I'll do my best not to let them get the best of you. What's left of you? 'Cause all of these shoulders hold ghosts on their crowns, and all of these bright eyes, they just start around the room. Are we going home soon? And all of these fingers hold stories in time that books fail to dictate and pens can't define. Do you need a ride to a better place than here? To a better place. your choices and find who's to blame, you do. And that's alright too. As all of these monsters hide under our beds and whisper sweet sounds to the ones in our head, they do. But we're going home soon to a better place than here, to a better place, my dear, to a better place than here, to a better place, my dear, my dear. I'll be a better place, my dear, 'cause it's a better place when you're here. I'll be a better place, my dear, 'cause it's a better place when you're here.
Thank you so much for having me. And thank you guys for listening and for being here.
Hello, I guess I'm on now. I'm Ellie, and I hope everyone's enjoying Earthapalooza today. All of the speakers and performances have been so amazing, so congratulations to everyone. I said I'm Ellie. I'm Ellie, and the first song I'm going to show you all today is called Let's Go to Mars in a Tinfoil Rocket. I wrote this song in 2018 in my first semester of college in Winter Park, Florida. And the story goes that I had never had time to eat breakfast at home. So I ate on the way to school. And when I was done, I folded the tinfoil into shapes. And one day I made what I imagined as a tinfoil rocket. And I jokingly was like, let's go to Mars in a tinfoil rocket. And so I made that idea into a song. And what the song ended up being about to me was recycling and reusing materials, but also about childhood and make-believe and imaginations. And these things go together to me because children see the world in such a unique way from adults. Like, no, you may not be able to go to Mars in a tinfoil rocket, but it's that kind of imagination that will envision the solutions and ideas for a better world.
What if all the useless junk had a purpose? And what if we repurposed it? The torn up pieces of half-used paper, aluminum wrapping up this morning's breakfast. Let's go to Mars in a tinfoil rocket. We'll streak through the sky in the dark. Vegetable oil will fuel our engines. We'll fly through space in our rubbish invention. Tinfoil rocket. An old fish bowl is an astronaut's helmet. Your footy pajamas a space suit. The ripped out air duct you found in the junkyard becomes an outer space garbage chute. We're going to Mars in a tinfoil rocket. We streak through the sky in the dark. Vegetable oil is fueling our engines. We're flying through space in our rubbish invention. Tinfoil rocket. Maybe we'll burn up, flying too close to the sun. Maybe we'll turn into sand. Adults always say that things are impossible. They say, grow up, little girl. But I believe that one day my tinfoil rocket will change the world. We went to Mars in a tinfoil rocket. We streaked through the sky in the dark. Vegetable oil fueled our engines. We flew through space in our rubbish invention. Let's go to Mars in a tinfoil rocket. We'll streak through the sky in the dark. Vegetable oil will fuel our engines. We'll fly through space in our rubbish invention. Tinfoil rocket. Tinfoil rocket. Tinfoil rocket. Tinfoil rocket.
My next song today is called Little Bumblebee. So I wrote this last summer in quarantine for a friend of mine, and it's from the perspective of a sunflower to a bumblebee. And it's really just about letting someone know that you're there for them no matter what. Even when life gets busy or things are rough, you just want the best for them.
I see you buzzing in the yard to visit me. Your sunflower of a heart, so won't you stay? I know you're a busy bee, but I like to keep Don't you think? It may be a stormy night in the garden. Oh, but you don't have to worry. You don't have to be alone. I'm planted right here, my roots running deep, and there's no place that I'd rather be. Little bumblebee, ooh, ooh. Who the hell gave you the right to fly into my life and make me wanna call you mine? Little bumblebee, ooh, ooh. You're black and blue all over, but I think yellow's more your color, don't you think? Don't you think?
I realized I forgot to show you all. I have the original tinfoil rocket that inspired the song. This is the capsule and this is the booster. So it's like, woo, tinfoil rocket. um, So if you liked what you saw, you can follow me on Instagram at ellie.monaco.music, and I also have a SoundCloud. Also, I wanted to mention, you might notice in my display name, I have Am I Next, which is a movement basically to bring awareness to discrimination such as racism, transphobia, and sexism at Berklee. So I have some links that I'll put in the chat that you guys can look at. Am I Next _Berklee on Instagram, and their actionables, all that good stuff. And yeah, thank you, Kevin, for inviting me to perform. It was really awesome, and I enjoyed the whole Earthapalooza. Have a good afternoon and evening, everyone.
Thank you so much, Ellie. So, well, we're about at the time. Let's just wrap up here at the beginning. We said there are 3 tasks for you in the audience: to enjoy yourself, to learn a few things, and to keep it going. Now, after all those performers, as well as lectures, hard to imagine not enjoying oneself, and hard to imagine not learning. Keeping it going, that's up to you. That can't be accomplished here. I urge you to get involved. Again, Lily is the group called the Sunrise Movement. There are many groups, and beyond that, many ways to communicate, to do something good. And I hope that it doesn't just end here for you. I'd like to thank some people. All of our songwriters performers: Sierra Cornell, Sofia, Elan, Mason Turner, De Kicks, Alyssa Payne, Claire Davis, and Ellie Monaco. As a little side, at one point I was planning to have 5 performers, and then the Songs for Social Change contest, they pass along songs which they think might work well for Earthapalooza, and they said so many that I just couldn't hold at 5, and had to make sure all of these were given the light of day, or at least in this event. Also, to my colleagues Linda Chase and Bresler for extremely different and extremely fascinating presentations. Lily Gardner of the Sunrise Movement, who just has her stuff together so much. Wish I had at that age. And Liberal Arts Chair Mike Mason, PD Darla Hanley, and last and emphatically not least, our tech pilot, Kaylee Noonan, where anything I thought we needed, she always did that and something better, or something I hadn't even thought of. Trust me, had she not been part of this thing would have been a train wreck. I hope that spirit of doing more than the minimum, than what's required, permeates all of us in these next couple years. All right. Happy Earth Day. Again, there's plenty of stuff happening tomorrow, but not here. We are declaring victory. Thank you, everybody. Kaylee, you want to take a bow? All right. The ghost in the machine given form. So thank you, everyone. It's been really great, wonderful event, and really very much a collaborative effort. So, all right, we're going to sign off now. Happy Earth Day.